When was the last time you felt overwhelming joy? Has it been a long time? Think about this. When was the last time you felt overwhelming joy? Maybe it was the day you got engaged or the day of your marriage. Maybe it was the birth of a child. The last time I felt overwhelming joy, it was the birth of my grandson, Wesleyan Paul. Maybe you were visiting that kingdom down in Orlando, the happiest place on earth, until you have to buy a Diet Coke for 12 bucks. Then all of a sudden, all the joy is gone. Maybe it was when you received a promotion or your favorite sports team won a national title. When was the last time you felt overwhelming joy? I remember years ago, we were going to surprise my daughters with a trip to Disney World. We packed up the car, we loaded them in, we never told them where we were going. We dropped hints all the way from St. Petersburg to Orlando. All the way down I-4, we kept on dropping these little hints and the excitement was building. And then all of a sudden, one of my daughters saw the high power lines in the shape of Mickey ears. Oh, you could hear their squealing in the back of the car. As we entered into Disney World, there's the arch that says, "Welcome to Disney World." You start to see the hotels and the characters. They were so excited, and their joy became my joy. Or how about Christmas morning? To this day, I still wake my adult children up screaming, "Santa Claus has come, Santa Claus has come, wake up, wake up." I mean, they still get excited, and their joy becomes my joy. In our world today, how do people try to find joy? Where do they look for it? Many people in our world today, in our culture, they think if only I could get a better education, if I only could get a degree, then I could have a better job and I could have more joy. Or if I could find a better vocation, a better career, or if I could have good family, or if I could just save enough money in my 401k or my long-term savings, then I would experience joy. Or if I could only go on vacation, kick back on the beach with a fruity drink and watch the sunset. Now, I want to challenge you to think differently because Jesus desires us to live in joy, to live in his joy. A couple of weeks ago, I challenged you with the question, what the world needs now is, how would you fill in the blank? Right? We could answer that question with all kinds of different answers. But my friends, what the world needs now is you. What the world needs now is us. What the world needs are mature disciples, mature followers of Jesus who live out their faith, who live love, who love Jesus, love people, and serve the world. And what does it look like to live out your faith? Well, Paul tells us in Galatians chapter 5. He calls it the fruit of the Spirit. And he says the fruit of the Spirit is. And once again, I wouldn't have to list it out for you because it's who you want to be. The fruit of the Spirit is who you want your spouse to be. The fruit of the Spirit is how you want your children to live or who you want your boss or your employees to be. See, the fruit of the Spirit is who I strive to become. And it's called the fruit of the Spirit because it's produced in us from the outside. No matter how hard we try, no matter how self-disciplined we are, we could not accomplish or grow the fruit of the Spirit on our own. And so Paul says, by the power of the Spirit at work in us, the fruit of the Spirit, what the Spirit grows in us is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. In other words, Paul says, max it out. You can produce as much of this fruit as you want. You cannot love too much. You cannot have too much joy or too much patience. You cannot be too kind. He goes on to write, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. In other words, let the Spirit well up within you. Walk by the Spirit. You be in God's word. You follow God's promptings. You open those doors that God presents before you. And last week I said the fruit of the Spirit is love, right? Now that's the catch-all. Now we know that love is not this ooey gooey emotional feeling. Love is a decision. Love is action. But love is the catch-all. And when you look at all the other fruits of the Spirit, they all lead back to love. But today I want to talk to you about joy. Joy is mentioned 59 times in the New Testament. And what's amazing is the Greek word for joy. Now remember, the New Testament was written in Greek. The Greek word for joy is chara. Okay, chara. It is the same root word as grace, charis. Okay, and so we have joy because of God's grace. God's undeserved, unearned, unmerited love and favor that he showers upon us. Joy is the awareness of God's love, is the awareness of God's grace and God's favor. In other words, joy is grace recognized. We understand the truth of who we are, to whom we belong, how we're loved, and how we're forgiven. So when Paul tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 to be joyful always, okay, I mean, we sit back and think, how in the world can I be joyful always, right? Because if you think about it, in our culture, in our lives, there are an awful lot of killjoys out there. Conflict arises, whether it be world conflict or with your own family. It seems like all of a sudden you're coasting through life and things are going great. And all of a sudden you have these ups and these downs and these twists and these turns. You have bumping of heads and conflict. And all of a sudden the joy is out the window. So how in the world are we supposed to have joy always? I mean, how can we maintain a consistent, constant joy? Because the joy that we normally associate with things is conditional, right? This is countercultural. What Jesus is teaching us is countercultural. See, our idea of joy is if something good happens in my life, it gives me this deep sense of satisfaction, this deep sense of happiness, joy. So if things go well in life, then I experience joy. When things are not going so well, then joy is gone. But Jesus says, no, 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 no. I want you to have a consistent kind of joy, a constant joy, a joy that is unconditional, a joy that is not correlated to what's happening in your life right now. And so how do we have that kind of joy? Well, Jesus tells us in John chapter 15, verse 5, he says this, I am the vine, you are the branches. Okay, the vine is the source of nutrition, right? The vine is the source of sustenance. It's the source of life. Okay, the vine is the main source, and the branches grow off the vine. The branches get their life from the vine. They get their power from the vine. Jesus says, I am the vine, we are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you. Now, what's amazing is, once again, that Greek word for remain is the word abide. It's one's home. To abide means to stay, to remain, to dwell, to not depart, not to leave, to continue to be present. In other words, what Jesus is saying is, if you abide in me, okay, to abide is the space in which you dwell. You make yourself at home with me, is what Jesus says. Abide in me, then you will bear fruit. See, Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain, if you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Okay, you can do nothing. So if we remove ourselves from him, we remove ourselves from his power, from his sustenance, you know what? We can do nothing. Paul tells us, so I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the sinful nature. You want to produce fruit in your life? Paul is telling us to stay connected, to abide in Jesus, to be in his word, to come before him in prayer, to receive the sacraments, to be in worship, to fellowship with other believers. See, if you really think about this, the word abide means submission to, resting in, and focusing on. It's submission to. When Jesus called, Peter and Andrew, James and John, Matthew, he simply said, follow me. Now, I know they saw some miracles. They were hearing stories already. And so when Jesus said, follow me, it didn't really make sense to them. Okay, but they did it, right? They submitted to his authority. And even though it didn't completely make sense, right action leads to comprehension. Right action, living it out, led to them having a more full understanding. You see, we're called to submit to the rule of Jesus, to submit to his authority, to submit to his guidance, to submit to his will in our life. I think abide means that we rest in. In other words, we put our full weight in him. We spend time with him. Once again, I think of a big beanbag chair. If I had one of those big comfy chairs, man, I would just plop in it and that would be my place. And you rest in him. You put your full weight in it. And the other thing is we focus on him. Okay, we focus, we spend time with him. Tim Keller once said it that the fruits of the Spirit is like the communicable attributes of God. In other words, you catch them, right? You catch the fruit of the spirits through close proximity. Jesus says in John 15, verse 8, "This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples." And when we bear the fruit of the Spirit, my friends, people will know. They will see the difference. They will see the change. He goes on to say, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love." It's not a spiritual transaction. It's not a religious transaction where you wash, you rinse, and you repeat. Okay, this is a lifeline. This is grace. Jesus is saying, if you keep my commandments, if you abide in me, you're going to remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. This is not if-then this is not conditional, because we would not be worthy at all. See, it's an invitation. Jesus is simply asking us, inviting us to trust in him, to abide in him, to recognize what it is that he's given and done for us, to put our trust in him. And as we do that, we will bear fruit. He said in John chapter 15, 11, Jesus says, "I have told you this so that." That's a hina clause. Okay, in the Greek, a hina clause is everything that precedes it. Okay, it builds up to this. So all of these things, if you do these things, if you abide in me, if you rest in me, if you focus in me, Jesus says, "I've told you this so that my joy," Jesus, there it is. If we do those things, my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. It may be mature. It may be full. It may be consistent. See, the joy that Jesus gives us is not conditional on what's happening in our life or in our world. It's a consistent joy that's full and complete. He goes on to say in John chapter 15, verse 12, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you." You see, as we remain connected to Jesus, that Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit, man, they well up in us. And he says, let that love, let that fruit, let that joy overflow to others. Now, I know some of you think, yeah, but you know what? This doesn't feel right, does it? Because we like to be focused on self. I mean, the truth is, we love me, and pride can be a horrible trap. We can be so focused on finances and cars and houses and possessions to bring us joy. And we all know, yeah, they might bring us happiness for a very short period of time, but then that happiness, that joy is gone. My friends, it's time to do something different. Now, what I want to share with you today, this is a little cheesy, okay? And I recognize the truth that this is cheesy, okay? But hang with me, because you know what? You're going to remember this. And it actually comes from R.C. Sproul, a great preacher from history. Okay, so please excuse the cheese and remember this. How do you spell joy? Not J-O-Y. It is Jesus, others, you. That's our priorities. Jesus, our personal relationship with Jesus, then others, then us, right? That's how you spell joy. But the problem is we don't spell it joy so often. Very often, unconsciously in our culture, we spell it Yaj. Yaj is you, we're focused on me, right? Then others, and then maybe Jesus after the fact. See, when we spell Yaj, okay, you, others, and Jesus, see, that's an outside in kind of joy. Things have to be taking place, going well in life for me to have joy. And that kind of joy is fleeting. But when you spell joy, Jesus, others, you, that's an inside out kind of joy. And my friends, that joy is fulfilling. That joy is consistent. That joy is complete. That joy will remain. And when you have that kind of joy, when you spell it Jesus, others, you, that kind of joy turns envy into contentment and celebration. When you spell joy, Jesus, others, you, it turns greed into generosity. It turns grumbling into gratitude. Have you ever met an angry Christian? Maybe, yeah, well, never mind. Have you ever met an angry Christian? My friends, as followers of Jesus, we should not be those angry Christians. We should be thankful. We should have a grateful heart. We should have a good attitude. When we spell joy, Jesus, others, you, into I get to. My friends, there is purpose in every aspect of your life. You know, when you go to work, there is opportunity for you to serve. There is opportunity for you to make a difference in the life of somebody. And when we have that changed perspective, when we have this perspective of instead of I have to, I get to watch these kids, I get to serve at church, I get to do this, man, it gives you joy as we serve others. See, when we spell joy, Jesus, others, you, it turns fear into faith, even in the darkest moments of life. It turns fear into faith. My friends, because Jesus rose from the dead, we know that when we face death, when we face those darkest moments of life, those are not periods. It's a comma. It's simply a comma. See, Jesus sees us through the darkest periods of life. Jesus sees us through death and gives us life, life eternal. And so joy, Jesus, others, you. You know, when we focus and we have our priorities straight, the fruits of the Spirit will well up within us. As we abide in Jesus, as we rest in him, as we focus on him, as we submit to his rule. And you know what? You've got to cultivate it. My wife and I, we just planted grass seed. Okay, we overseeded a pretty rough looking lawn. And you've got to cultivate it, don't you? You've got to loosen the soil. You've got to plant the seed. You've got to nourish it. You got to water it. And then it takes time. It takes time. You set the environment, you take time. And at times, you don't even see it happening. You know, but then all of a sudden, there it is. The grass is there, the fruit is produced. Jesus, others, you. When we keep our priorities straight, when we focus on Jesus, when we rest in him, when we submit to his rule, the fruit of the Spirit is going to be produced in you. Hey, thank you for joining me. Live love. Love Jesus, love people, and serve the world.